Jesus loved, cared for people, introduced God the Father through prayer and conversation. Let me say that again. Jesus loved, cared for people, and introduced them to the Father through prayer and conversation. It is through prayer and conversations that we partner with health for ourselves, our marriage, our family, our homes, our church, and our community. Jesus loved, cared for people, and introduced them to the Father through prayer and conversation. So if you're going to love your spouse, those are the two things you should be doing every day. Pray and talk. Pray and talk. We're going to help you do those two things in the workshop. Okay, like we said, this participation, we want you to get involved. You're going to be doing it, otherwise you're not learning it. Okay, so you're going to be praying with one another at some point. You're going to be talking to one another at some point. Okay? Okay, so now we're going to get to what we call the warm-up. Okay, and I'm not going to go too deeply into these, but I want to help you. Like I said, we're talking about communication. We're talking about marriage connection. Now, individually, this is what I'm suggesting. What we're suggesting that you do, especially every time you're trying to have a hard conversation, you're struggling, you're in conflict, whatever it is. Okay. Now, what we're calling it the warm-up. So you have the warm-up in your book, right? In your page 7. Okay. So, number 1, ultimately, your goal in this conversation, in this interaction with your spouse, is to be more like Jesus. That's your goal. We could probably stop there. Ultimately, that is your goal. So you're going to talk about the dishes, you're about to talk about the house, talk about the bills, you're going to talk about the child, you talk about whatever. Ultimately, your individual goal is to be more like Jesus before, during, and after the conversation. Okay? This is the warm-up. So this is something that you're doing internally. This is what you're warming up to have a conversation. You follow me? Okay. Number 2, you want to be thinking about ways that you're not like Jesus before you open your mouth. Right? So first, think about how you can be more like Jesus, and the second is think about how you're not like him. Okay? Next, there's a thing called apply the log spec principle, which is based on Matthew 7. Now, what does that mean? Very quickly, again, we're not going to break this down. There's probably a series of sermons that we can go on this one. But basically, you're wanting to find the log in your own eye before you open your mouth to talk about your spouse with whatever it is, the topic. Seeing the log in their eye, you need to see the log in your eye. Now, let me clarify that once just as shortly as I can, concisely as I can. Okay. What Jesus is talking about there, he's not talking about necessarily, because you have two ways you can look at it, right? One is, we have sin. So when people say, I'm just trying to satisfy the flesh. Well, what's inside the flesh? What's inside the flesh? Anybody? Yeah? What else? Say it loud. And what's inside the flesh? Okay, good. Okay. Okay. What is? Okay. Organs. So the flesh, in the quotation, in the Bible perspective, is sin. Sin makes up your flesh, right? So example, your desire for comfort is not a bad thing, right? But it becomes the flesh when the comfort is at the expense of somebody else. So you're ready to hurt somebody if you don't get comforted. If you're ready to hurt somebody that you don't get respect, it becomes the flesh. So what's inside of that is sin. Pride, selfishness, anger, bitterness, fear of man, right? That's sin, right? Now, that's not what Jesus is talking about here that you should see as the log. What it is telling you is the acts of the sin is what you should see as the log. So there's sin because of brokenness, because of Genesis 3. Sin came into the world, right? So Adam and Eve eat of the tree, right? That God said they're not to, so sin into the world. So now we have sin, and then we are many times we're sinning. So there's acts of sin. So when you're about to communicate with your spouse, it might help you if you remember the last time you acted sinfully. Because you know what's going to do? It's going to humble you. You're about to put your foot down on something, right? You're like, I'm going to give them a piece of my mind, right? But God says, I want you to warm up. Warm up. Wait a minute. Look at how you've been acting. When was the 24, 48 hours when you spoke out of turn and you cursed and you did all these things? Humble yourself before you have the conversation. Okay? That's why we're calling the warm up. It's going to help you have the conversation. Okay. Number 4, follow the Spirit. So everybody knows Galatians talk about being led by the Spirit, right? Be led by the Spirit. So what we're talking about here is what you want to do is breathe yourself out, because yourself is full of yourself. Yourself is full of yourself. Breathe yourself out, breathe the Spirit in. Let the Spirit lead you in the conversation instead of doing what you feel like doing and saying what you feel like saying. Okay? All right, next one is transfer your rights and responsibilities. So this one, very important. You always want to make sure that your purpose outweigh your outcome. You probably want to write that one down. Your purpose should always outweigh your outcome. What does that mean? As a husband, you're supposed to be protecting your wife. So your purpose is to protect your wife, but your outcome is to get respect. Right? That's what you want. That's why you're going to go have this conversation. You're like, I need to get, she's just disrespecting me right now, right? She's too disrespectful. So your purpose is to protect her. Your outcome is to get respect. What we're saying is, before you open your mouth, make your role, what God called you to do, more important than getting what you want. Okay? Make your purpose outweigh your outcome. It's more important that you do what the Lord asked you to do than you getting what you want in that moment. All right? So you have the right. You have the right to be respected, by the way. It's not a bad thing. So your right is, God said you're supposed to be respected, but what happens when you don't get it? You have to watch out, because now you're making your right be more important than your responsibility. Right? So wives, it says, love and respect your husband. Well, but I'm not getting safety or protection or whatever it is. Your role is to love and respect your husband. That's your purpose, but your desire is to get comfort and protection, which is not a bad thing, but you can't let that be more important than your role. Does that make sense? Okay. All right. Next, emotionally respond. So this is a big one that I work with a lot of people on. So emotional response, what does that mean? If your spouse they're sharing something with you about something that made them happy, or something that made them sad or angry or whatever it is, right? One of the things that you're wanting to do, remember, it's a preparation exercise. This is a preparation exercise. What you want to do is prepare your heart to rejoice with those who rejoice and weep with those who weep. That's what you're preparing your heart to do before you open your mouth. Get your heart right before you, and by the way, all of these that were just covered, it takes less than 30 seconds to do it once you figured it out. Once you just read through them and you understand them, it's pretty easy. Lord, my ultimate goal is to be like you. Show me ways that I'm not like you, right? Help me to apply the log spec principle. Show me ways that I've sinned against you and not acted responsibly, right? Help me to follow the leading of the Spirit, right? Help me to make my role and my responsibilities more important than the rights that you've given me. And then the last one, It's helped me to have an emotional response when my wife says, I lost the fork, I don't know where the fork is, and it's making me sad. And you go, right? But she said, well, you should have an emotion associated with what she's feeling, right? So what we're doing is we're waking ourselves up, guys. So this is the warm-up. You're about to hear some things that's going to help you do this even better. But this is a warm-up. Before you open your mouth, there's so many times I'm having my conversation with my wife and I'm like, don't say anything. Because I'm not ready. My heart is not ready. I'm about to respond and say some things I shouldn't. Right? And I know that because I feel the thing in here. I feel it in here. Right? So I got to get my heart right before I open my mouth, before I respond to anything. Okay? So, warm up. 30 seconds. Less than 30 seconds in some cases. If you just go through this, it will save you a lot of headache, a lot of fighting, a lot of conflict. You will avoid all of that if you just go through these. I took them on my phone. I put them on my phone one time, and I'm just looking at it all the time, all day. I wake up and I look at it and I go, I got to remind myself to do this. And you know what? It works. And you notice that the warm-up didn't have anything to do with my wife. The warm-up had anything to do with me. And if I would go through the warm-up, it prevents conflict here. You see it? All right.